All right, heading into the Super Bowl, there's a lot of things that could happen, meaning there's a lot of things that could go wrong for specific teams. And while we all like to make our predictions and say, I know for a fact that this is what's going to happen, the reality is you never truly know. So I thought it could be a fun video to talk about what the potential issues could happen for both of these teams. What is each team's worst case scenario? If you are a Chiefs or 49ers fan, what are the things you're worried about that could happen going into the Super Bowl? Well, let's just get into it. These are the 5 biggest concerns each team should have entering Super Bowl 58. For the Chiefs, number 5 is red zone issues. I do think there is some potential concern there with the Chiefs' red zone offense not being great on the season. 19th ranked versus the 49ers is first ranked offensively, and that's, how often when you get into the red zone do you score a touchdown. The Chiefs sometimes struggled. They've sometimes won by kicking a lot of field goals, which Harrison Butker's great. He'll make the field goals, usually when you're in that situation, but still, you'd rather be getting 7 than 3. So that's something that you could definitely look at as a potential concern. Not a massive one, though. I think there is kind of a drop off between 4 and 5, but that's the 5th biggest concern for the Chiefs entering the Super Bowl. Number 4 is too many San Francisco receivers. The Chiefs have been awesome this season with, L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie kind of being their star corners. McDuffie out of the slot and then, Sneed as their outside receiver. And they have, other players who can cover well, whether it's their other corners or their other, safeties who have to cover a decent amount. Their linebackers cover very well. But I don't know if they've had a matchup quite like San Francisco, which, again, you talk about the kind of the big 4 with them, with Christian McCaffrey being the halfback, Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Ayuk. Those are a lot of guys you have to cover, and, how will Kansas City live up to that task? They've done a good job so far. No reason to doubt them, but there's no reason to doubt the 49ers receivers either, which is why it's a concern. Number 3 is the San Francisco running game works. And again, just to reiterate, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I'm just saying this is something you'd be worried about potentially happening if you're a Chiefs fan. And for the Chiefs, if the San Francisco running game is working, well, this could hurt you in several ways. For one thing, just the obvious way, if they can run the ball a lot, they can move the ball down the field, and you could be in trouble that way. The other reason why it's concerning, though, is if you do get behind, let's say, for example, you're up, just hypothetical scenario. You're up, the 49ers are up 10 with 10 minutes left. I don't know. Don't know where I came up with that scenario. But, if that situation is happening, if you remember, in Super Bowl 54, the Niners, when they tried to run the ball, it wasn't overly effective. They got a couple nice runs, but they weren't running the ball with great efficiency down the stretch, which is part of why they passed it later on. Whereas this time, I think Shanahan, if he can run the ball to run out the clock, that's what he would try and do, and we would see if it worked. But definitely something that could be concerning if you're a Chiefs fan. Number 2 is tackles, and I don't mean making tackles, I mean the offensive tackles for the Kansas City Chiefs. Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor haven't been great this season. They're better in pass protection than run blocking, which is okay, because that's usually what you want your tackles to be good at. But there is concern there. And obviously with the pass rush the 49ers have, I still think Chase Young is good. I know that there's kind of debate over that. I still think he's good, although maybe hasn't lived up to the hype of being drafted number 2 overall for sure. I also think that Nick Bosa is amazing, and you might have to help out Nick Bosa or help out your tackle who's blocking Nick Bosa a lot, which can create some other issues. So that's definitely something to be concerned about. We all remember when there was a big mismatch on the offensive line for the Chiefs, a few years ago when they played Tampa Bay. That didn't go too well. And while I think Kansas City would be more equipped to handle things now, I think they would help out the tackles, unlike what they did against Tampa Bay and things like that. It's still a concern you have if you're a Chiefs fan. And number 1, the biggest concern that I would have if I'm a Chiefs fan entering Super Bowl Sunday is what if the wide receiver depth struggles, which is something we've seen all season. We haven't seen these past couple games, so that's kind of been nice for the Chiefs. But entering the playoffs, we all kind of felt like the Chiefs aren't going to make the Super Bowl because they don't have the wide receiver depth. Now, other guys have stepped up for sure, and I think part of it is just sort of making Rashee Rice their number 1 wide receiver has gone a long way. But again, you think about a lot of their losses, the Marquez Valdes-Scantling drop, the Kadarius Toney, take your pick, the Lions game, and also the Bills game where he was the offsides, right? All of that stuff is not good. But when you also factor in to the fact that, it's just getting open is another aspect here That's the concern. So again, will that cost them the Chiefs the Super Bowl? Well, that's for you to decide. But if I'm a Chiefs fan, that's what I'm most concerned about. But what if I'm a 49ers fan? What are my biggest concerns there? Well, let's get into it. Starting off with number 6. I know it's a top 5 list, but I had 6, so I went with 6. It's my list, whatever. Who cares? Jake Moody has to be a concern. Missed a few field goals as of late. Has missed a field goal in each of the playoff games he's played in. So while he's still been pretty automatic from like under 40, there is the concern of like if it's a 47-yard field goal for the win, is he going to make it? And when you have Harrison Butker on the other side, like again, it's something that concerns you a little bit if you're a 49ers fan entering the game. Number 5 is one I already kind of touched on. The Chiefs can cover, right? So again, kind of one of the Chiefs, debatably their biggest strength of the season has been their coverage unit, and debatably the 49ers, the biggest strength of their season has been their plethora of wide receivers, which is why it's kind of both on both of their concern list, because it's something that 49ers are used to just having when they're in football games. Is, oh, yeah, we have receivers who can get open. Like, that's going to happen. What if that doesn't happen in this game? What could come of that? It's definitely something that you have to wonder, like, is it possible? And the answer is, of course, it's possible, which is, again, we'll all give our predictions as to what we think is going to happen, but you don't know what's going to happen, and the game could be decided with that, which is why it's concerning for both teams, but also exciting for both teams. Both are true. Number 4, O-line issues. So both teams' offensive lines make this list. Neither one are great offensive lines. Well, that's not true. They both have great players on the offensive line. Chiefs' interior offensive line is really good, although Thuney being injured kind of, we'll see if he plays, and if he does, we'll see how well he plays. Obviously, Trent Williams may be the best player in football, so certainly the best offensive lineman in football, I would say, for the 49ers, but a lot of holes in there as well. Specifically, Colton McKivitz, I could see being a potential issue. Now, I don't know if the 49ers, I don't know if the Chiefs have an edge rusher. I mean, they don't have an edge rusher like Nick Bosa. They do have Chris Jones, who's awesome from the inside, but you can kind of help yourself out a little bit more there, but still, there's issues. Like, that's a concern you have to have. That's something that going into the game, you're just like, yeah, that favors Kansas City. It does. Number 3, Kelce beats zone. Kelce, one of the best zone beaters in the history of the sport. The 49ers play a lot of zone coverage, and not just that, Rashee Rice been very good at zone coverage, very good against zone coverage this season as well. So that's just a concern. It's just a bad matchup. And, my immediate reaction right when I saw these two teams, this is one of the things I thought of and kind of why in that video I made like later, on a conference championship Sunday night about my first preview, I said I'm leaning towards the Chiefs. Now I'm not so sure. I do feel like it's a coin flip game, but, that's a huge mismatch. It just is. And, maybe the 49ers can defend it well, but they have given up yards to tight ends this season. So, they've had moments where tight ends have been able to get their yards. They have to be really careful with Kelce and with Rashee Rice. So that's a massive concern. Number 2, Purdy bad. Like, listen, Purdy hasn't been pretty in the first half of both of these past 2 games. He just hasn't. He started slow both games, and you have to wonder, like, I don't think they can come back from down 17 at the half against Kansas City. I just don't, right? They did it against Detroit. I think it'll be a lot tougher against that Chiefs defense. You kind of have to just, limit the mistakes, right? For Purdy, you don't have to be perfect every play. Purdy makes so many plays offensively. You just hope he doesn't screw up and put the ball in harm's way, because if he turns the ball over like twice, that might be all Kansas City needs. So that's a big concern, but it's not the biggest concern. The biggest concern is, I think, obvious. The number 1 concern I would have if I was a fan of the 49ers entering Super Bowl 58 is if the 49ers have no answer for Mahomes. It's obvious, right? I mean, the biggest concern is you're playing against Mahomes. Like, it is what it is. Mahomes is amazing. Even if you have great moments, like Mahomes can still, make things happen. So that's definitely, it's what happened last time, kind of, right? Mahomes didn't have a great day, but at the end, he did what he had to do. So that is the biggest concern I would have for for the 49ers and for the Chiefs. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.